This is Chris Collinsworth. Be sure to check out the PFF College podcast as our experts provide insight on all the league's top stories. Every game, every player, every play. Download and subscribe on iTunes or your favorite provider.
Hello and welcome back to the PFF podcast. Sam Monson here with Mike Renner. David Tuchman is away in, I don't want to say sunny Prague, because I suspect it's not sunny in Prague in February, but that's where he is. He has told us that, for the record, he is picking New England and he doesn't think it's going to be particularly close. But me and Mike are going to dive into Super Bowl 51 preview, the New England Patriots against the Atlanta Falcons. Mike, what's your first reaction of this matchup?
Well, I think my first reaction is that I agree with Tuck and that just going through position by position in each positional group, I don't see really where the Falcons have a huge advantage. I know everyone was going to want to talk about Brady versus Ryan and that, but it's basically flipping a coin there in terms of who had a better season and who's going to have a better game. I mean, they were both so good that there's no real differentiator there. So you have to look through other positional, other units and whatnot. And I just don't see after that where the Falcons have the advantage, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting because both offenses should have success. It's probably going to come down to which defense does a better job. And obviously the Patriots throughout the season have had a much better defense than the Falcons. But when you look at it, I just wonder if that Atlanta offense isn't much better equipped to still have success. It's almost a game that's going to come down to just which team on either side of the ball is going to be more efficient. I think they're both going to do some good things on either side of the ball, and then it seems to me like a really interesting matchup that has the potential to be a pretty good Super Bowl.
I agree. I think it's a lot more underrated of a matchup than people want to make it out to be. I think it's more interesting of a matchup than even Green Bay versus the Patriots would be, even though people would be falling all over themselves with Aaron Rodgers against Tom Brady. But I think this is even, a more interesting, for a bunch of different reasons. One of which just being, this Atlanta Falcons offense was one of the best of all time. Like, it legitimately was a unstoppable offense for a good portion of the season. And I just think going up against this Patriots defense, there's so many game planning aspects that are going to be interesting. This is one that maybe watching it live might not be, amazing to watch, but when reviewing it, there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff on the tape that I'm probably a little more excited about than the actual, watching the TV copy itself.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the game itself will be a good one as well. We've just done a bunch of old Super Bowls, and it's amazing how many of them end up being terrible games. They're not close. They're disappointing letdowns. But every now and again, you get one where it's a legitimate, fantastic finish. It's close all the way through the game. This one feels like it could be that similar kind of deal. I want to dive into it a little bit more in detail than we tend to in these preview podcasts because we've only got one game to look at. Let's start with the Atlanta offense side of the ball, because when you look at this Falcons offense, obviously the two superstars are the Matt Ryan to Julio Jones connection, and that's been phenomenal this season. But I think what makes this offense so compelling is that it goes so much beyond that. Matt Ryan has been playing so well. He's been able to get quality production out of guys like Mohamed Sanu, out of Taylor Gabriel, whose passer rating being targeted is like 148 or something crazy. The two tight ends, Austin Hooper, the rookie, Toilolo. I was trying to put an L in there for some reason. Toilolo and, the running backs out of the backfield, Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, who are both really effective weapons, both in the run game and the pass game. And obviously that offensive line has improved dramatically this season with the addition of Alex Mack at center, and that kind of boost that gives everything. So you look at this New England defense and you say, okay, it's a pretty good defense, and they'll probably throw some schematic stuff at them that they haven't necessarily seen before. But I don't know that you can actually stop this Atlanta offense in a realistic way.
No, I don't think they're going to stop them, but I think at some point you can contain the Falcons' offense, just because I think it's going to be. I don't think the run game is going to have much of an impact on it. Just the way that New England lines up with those three guys in the middle, Trey Flowers, Malcolm Brown, just that whole defensive line is so good at playing the run first and then pass rushing second. But they shut down the run pretty much every single game, of late. So they're very good at that. So I don't see that being a huge issue for the Patriots. It's going to be more the pass game. And one of the last weapons you mentioned there, I think Tevin Coleman to me is the biggest X factor. We saw him. He didn't split out wide much during the regular season. It was only around 40 snaps or so. But the game where he did split out wide the most was against Denver, when they realized that, hey, we might not have these matchup issues on the outside, but if we can get Tevin Coleman against the linebacker, that's a huge matchup advantage for us. So they would split him out wide, I think 9 times in that game, went for something like 80 yards, touchdown in that one. I see a similar thing maybe happening this week where Tevin Coleman maybe lines up in the backfield, they split out to 5 wide, and then all of a sudden you have someone like Dante Hightower, someone like Kyle Van Noy, someone that's not supposed to be guarding someone like Tevin Coleman, a guy who has, legit wide receiver skills. I think that to me could be one of the biggest matchups, one of the biggest X factors in this game is what they do with Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think they even need necessarily to split him out from the backfield. I think you can, those swing routes, the flare patterns from running backs out of the backfield, just pitch plays on those outside zone. You're basically praying. You're trying to get Tevin Coleman's speed working to your advantage versus New England's linebackers, which aren't the quickest in the world since they traded away Jamie Collins. So I think they've got a variety of different ways that they can try and get Tevin Coleman the ball and just use his speed to burst to the sideline or to space in a way that those New England linebackers just can't cope with, can't match up with.
You mentioned Jamie Collins. Can you imagine if the Patriots lose and someone like Coleman has a big game in the receiving, or, someone goes off against the linebackers, there's an obvious busted coverage, that was the linebacker's fault, something like that. The kind of the blowback that would happen for just trading one of your best players midseason and not really having a huge replacement plan for him. If their linebackers just look awful in this one and the Patriots end up losing, so if Bill Belichick actually for once gets some criticism.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the ultimate kind of test of that. The whole thing at the time was, it'll hurt us this season to a degree, but we think we'll be better off long term with it. And overriding all of that had to be the opinion that it's probably not going to be the thing that costs us a Super Bowl. It may hurt us a little bit overall over the course of this year, but it's not going to be the difference between winning or losing the another championship. If it actually did end up becoming the difference between them winning and losing the championship, that would be a tough pill to swallow. I think if you're anybody in that New England organization, even if you sanctioned the move, if you thought it was the right idea, it's going to be tough to live with that over the offseason. Yeah, okay, we're in a better position now, but we should have another Lombardi trophy if we had Jamie Collins still on the roster.
Yeah, it really is amazing to think how they could have Chandler Jones as well. They could have Rob Gronkowski on this team. And, 3 of their 4 best players, arguably, they won't have. If they win this game, I don't see how you can say, a hot take of the week, that this isn't the best coaching job of all time. When you have 3 of your top 4 players out, your quarterback misses 4 games of the season, and you only lose 2 games all year long, that would be, to me, one of the best probably the best coaching job of all time.
Wow, that is some hot take ability right there.
I missed my hot take last week, so I had to throw it in here.
Well, you've got to get in there early and protect your territory now that Pat McAfee is in the hot take world.
He's going to take business. He's going to take it over, so I have to.
You got to protect your territory, Mike. This
corner,
is people coming for you. I mean, I think the Jamie Collins thing is particularly interesting in this because of what we just said about Tevin Coleman and even Devontae Freeman. Those guys are matchup nightmares for linebackers, and a guy like Jamie Collins is rarely qualified to be able to do that in terms of athleticism, in terms of coverage skills. So, you could easily say that in any given game, Jamie Collins is the difference between winning or losing. But just on paper, this one, it's more apparent than most matchups you're going to find. That could be a really big factor in this. The the one thing that I want to talk about that the Falcons are setting up, they're setting up the Mohamed Sanu trick shot throw. It has to happen. Like, I've been trying to actually find odds on this somewhere, and I've yet to find somewhere that has it listed as a prop bet. But if you can find odds on Mohamed Sanu attempting a pass in the Super Bowl, I would be all over it. It's never been a ringing endorsement of him as a player that I think clearly the two best plays of his career are both pass attempts. Back when he was playing with the Bengals, he's completed 5 passes from 5 attempts in his NFL career for 170-something yards and a touchdown, I think. He's got a perfect NFL passer rating as a thrower of the ball. And of those pass attempts, there's a 50-yard bomb in there, and there's a 73-yard, I think, touchdown pass in there. And those are legitimately fantastic passes. And what makes this interesting is that during the NFC Championship game, they lined him up a couple of times in the backfield as essentially a wildcat quarterback. Or I think they did it once in the NFC Championship game, and they did it once earlier in the season as well. On both occasions, he ran the ball. It was basically a quarterback dive, a quarterback draw. But when you've got a guy there that has that history of ridiculous passes as essentially a makeshift trick shot quarterback, and a guy that they are putting on tape, him lining up in the backfield, plus it being the Super Bowl, which is when the trick shots come out, it's got to be happening, right? There's going to be a Mohamed Sanu trick play throw.
Oh, no doubt in my mind. That is happening. I mean, he has 5 attempts in his career, but I'd already feel more comfortable with him as my starter if I'm the Jets than Christian Hackenberg. Because he's legitimately thrown 2 of the best passes each of the seasons that, so 2 years ago, actually, or was it 3 years ago when he was with the Bengals, the throw he made into a tight window on the sidelines about 48 yards downfield was arguably the best throw of all time in terms of difficulty, in terms of window, and in terms of, where he had to put it and where if he missed it by a yard either way, it was intercepted. It was just an unbelievable throw. He legitimately looks like an NFL quarterback when he's released the ball. The ball goes where it's supposed to go. So I think, yes, very much so. You use that. You at least you've shown, that he's going to be a threat as a quarterback in the Wildcat. Run a little play action. Julio Jones, Gabriel going deep. I think it's a no-brainer at this point.
I'm telling you, if you can find odds, get money on it, because both me and Mike think it's happening. So obviously it won't. But so that's Mohamed Sanu as a trick play danger in this game. What about Sanu and Taylor Gabriel as secondary and tertiary weapons in the passing game after Julio Jones? In fact, let's start with Julio Jones. How much are the Patriots going to limit him? Because we've seen throughout this season that if you really want to take away Julio Jones, you can do it. I mean, teams have done it so far this season. He's had a couple of games where he's been limited to 1 catch or 2 catches for under 40 yards. If you do want to take him away, it's possible, but you do have to dedicate a ridiculous amount of resources and your coverage shell into doing it. So how much are the Patriots going to do that, or how much are they going to kind of let him have his and just try and play sound defense overall?
I think that's the interesting matchup in this game, and I kind of wrote about it a little bit earlier this week. And I think the biggest thing when talking about it is the fact that the Patriots are very comfortable dropping 8 into coverage and basically removing a man from their defensive coverage scheme. So they'll play they'll play cover 2. And basically, if whoever's following Julio Jones, because I imagine they'll have one of their corners follow Julio Jones, is basically just playing man coverage on Julio Jones while the rest of the defense plays cover 2. So they're very comfortable. They dropped 8 in the coverage, 26% of the snaps this season. I mean, that's so far and away the highest percentage in the NFL. No one's even close. The Cowboys were second at 19.3%. NFL average is under 10%. It's just they aren't even, they're playing at different games kind of on defense with how often they drop 8 in coverage. And I think that's the biggest thing in that will help them take away Julio Jones, because there's so many different coverages you can use when you drop 8 in coverage. It's very different than, removing a man when you're double teaming Julio Jones when you only drop 7. That leaves you, deficient in other areas coverage-wise. But when you drop 8, you can still run your normal coverages and be fine.
So that brings us to the second and third guys. So Sanu and Taylor Gabriel. what kind of success can they have against what is essentially going to be a legitimate coverage shell outside of Julio Jones? And in particular, Taylor Gabriel is this quick, shifty, fast receiver that's been beating up on teams number 2 and number 3 cornerbacks. The Patriots are probably going to have Malcolm Butler on him,
I would imagine, just in terms of speed. Eric Rowe, while fast, doesn't really have the shiftiness I would. So I think they go, if I were to guess, they'd go Rowe on Jones, Butler on Gabriel, Ryan on Sanu. And obviously the Falcons aren't that static with their personnel in terms of running 3 wide receivers all the time. But when that is the case, I think those would be the matchups.
Yeah, which, like I say, that makes it interesting because Gabriel's not going to be going up against number 2, number 3 guys that aren't capable of covering him.
Yeah, it's basically a number 1 corner.
Yeah, a number 1 all-pro corner. So which one of those guys, if either of them, can actually get something done against these New England corners?
That's a great question. I think it's probably Mohamed Sanu. I just think Logan Ryan is probably the weakest of that group. And I think Eric Rowe is probably the weakest of that group. But that, like I said before, they're not going to be putting Eric Rowe one-on-one on an island, I would imagine, if that's the case. So I think Mohamed Sanu, if anyone has a big game, he's looked good over the course of this postseason. So I think he's the one. If I'm putting money on anyone, it's going to be Sanu.
And how much do you think this Patriots defensive front is going to be able to shut down the Falcons' running game, which has been a big part of their offense this year? They've been able to run the ball against most people, and the Patriots have had this really stout run defense. And in particular, that outside zone scheme that the Falcons really love to run, the Patriots are really good at stuffing that up at the point of attack and basically folding it in on itself rather than letting you get to the sideline. They force the cutback early in that.
That's the thing. They're so good in run defense. Those guys up front, Allen Branch, they don't get moved off their spot. They don't get out of the gaps they're supposed to be in. Allen Branch can 2-gap centers extremely well with his length and size. I just don't see that being a point of success for the Falcons in this one, just because of no one really has had success against the Patriots. They are great at clogging up running lanes.
And the big X factor, I think, on this side of the ball is turnovers. The Falcons have just had a ridiculously low number of them. I think they've had 11 so far this season, which is a ludicrously low number of turnovers for an offense, especially when as successful as they've been. But Ryan has put the ball in harm's way at times this year. It's not like as good as he's been and as improved as he's been this year compared with previous seasons, he's still actually had a reasonably high number of turnover-worthy plays. It's just that they haven't all ended up in turnovers. But if the Patriots can actually force 1 or 2 of those, which in particular, the way the Patriots will show you stuff that you just haven't seen from other people, especially with 2 weeks to prep coming into the game, it seems like the kind of thing where you might get a couple of extra series because Matt Ryan is forced into a mistake that he hasn't been making.
I don't know if turnovers are going to be that big of a deal. I mean, both teams had 11 turnovers all season long. That's just, among the best in the NFL. I think that was actually tied for the best in the NFL. I just don't see it. Maybe a team has 1. I mean, like with those type of odds, it's just there could be 0 in the entire game. So I'm not sure it's going to be a huge deal. But like you said, if there is one quarterback who I'd say is probably more likely to, I'd say it's Matt Ryan at this point.
So let's flip to the other side of the ball. You've got the New England Patriots, their offense, going up against this Atlanta defense, which has been not good throughout the year, but has actually been playing ironically better since they lost Desmond Trufant, their number 1 corner. The interesting thing to me is, obviously the Patriots are going to have some success. It's a good offense, and this is not a great Atlanta defense. But are they able to play sound enough that they can just slow them down enough for their own offense to basically win a comparable shootout?
So this is where I think the biggest mismatch of any matchup problem in this game occurs, and it's the Patriots' rushing attack against the Falcons' run defense. Now, if you're the Falcons, you're probably happy if the Patriots are handing it off to LeGarrette Blount and you don't have to stop, Tom Brady. But at the same time, I think they're going to be getting Tom Brady into favorable down and distances with that running game, because you just look at this Falcons offensive line. I'm going to go through the weights here of the players up front. Their defensive tackles, Jonathan Babineau, 300 pounds. Grady Jarrett, 305 pounds. Their ends, Vic Beasley, 246. Brooks Reed, 254. And their linebackers, Devondre Campbell, 232. Deion Jones, 222. There just isn't enough mass up front, I believe, to hold up against this Patriots offensive line that runs so many gap schemes. They fire off the ball. They want to get movement on your defensive line. And then LeGarrette Blount's legitimately, has 10 to 15 pounds on both these linebackers. He's going to be falling 2 to 3 yards forward every time. I just don't see this ending well for the Atlanta Falcons defense in that regard.
Also, having stood next to Grady Jarrett, I have no idea how he's 305 pounds. That seems like a weight, with the John Randall story where he went to the hardware store to get like 10 pounds of chain stuffed down his pants before the weigh-in. He's small. I mean, he's built like a brick, but he's not a big guy. So you think this is going to be, because the interesting thing about the Patriots every week is which kind of game running back is it going to be? Is it going to be a LeGarrette Blount game, a Dion Lewis game, a James White game? You think this is going to be a LeGarrette Blount smash mouth 25 carry kind of game?
I'm not saying it will be. I'm saying if you get down to the goal line, if they wanted to, they're just going to have success when they line up and do that. I don't think, I still think you want the ball in Tom Brady's hands as much as possible, but at the same time, the Falcons are probably going to have to worry about it. If you're worrying about the run, that's even worse for you. You're just put in more difficult situations than at that point. As a linebacker worrying about the run, you're going to be starting to bite on play action more and things like that. So I just don't think that's a very good matchup for them at all.
But I think that's the interesting thing about this Patriots offense is that they zero in on what type of game it is with those running backs, and then they just go with that. It's not like with three guys that are sort of so diverse in skill set, you might imagine that they would use them all constantly throughout the game and just keep you off balance. But what tends to happen is that they just figure out what you're going to be worse at dealing with, and then they just use that guy all game. So if you can't stop LeGarrette Blount, he's going to have 25 carries a game. They're just going to pound it on you. But, if you're going to struggle matching up in the pass game or, that kind of thing. So I think if they decide they have that advantage on the ground, I think they'll feed him the ball plenty. It won't be a case of they just bring him in for the short yardage stuff and pick up the easy conversions. I think they'll really lean on the Falcons that way and try and grind them out of the game.
I could see that. I mean, I could definitely see that being the case because, like I said, it just seems like such a mismatch on paper. Shaq, and just the Patriots' run blocking is fantastic up front. I think Marcus Cannon and Shaq Mason are probably two of the best at their respective positions at gaining movement off of the line of scrimmage. And so I think heavy dose of that run on that off right tackle, and they'll just have success with it, I believe.
So if you're Atlanta, what is the game plan to try and slow down this New England team? Because they have some ugly looking mismatches at several places in this defense, and the stuff that's been good for them over the year, Vic Beasley becoming this sack artist. I don't think Vic Beasley's going to get a sack against Marcus Cannon the way he's been playing. So what do you do if you're this Falcons team to try and slow down this New England offense?
So I've thought about this a lot because I basically have been, just like they don't like you said, they don't match up amazingly well. It's not like they're superiorly talented to the Patriots offense that they can just, that they have places where they're going to, win. They're all over the field. It seems like there's mismatches and that they're at a disadvantage. So I think what you have to do at that point is run your cover three, run the defense that you know best. And because it's going to put an extra man in the box, it's going to put Ken O'Neill in the box to help play the run. That'll help you against that. But also, you cannot bust coverages against the New England Patriots. You cannot do what the Steelers did last week and give them free yards down the field because Tom Brady's not an amazing deep ball thrower. These aren't amazing deep ball receivers to where that is going to, you're going to give up big plays on closely guarded, and man-to-man coverage, that sort of thing where guys, jumping, you don't have Julio Jones jumping over you on the sideline. You don't have these mismatches with the wide receivers going deep. Where they're going to beat you is with those paper cuts underneath. So as, if you're the Falcons defense, make sure you're not busting coverages. Make sure you're playing the coverages that you know the best, that you won't bust, and make them beat you with 1,000 paper cuts. Make them complete two passes every time to get a first down. And hopefully that that ends up, sort of limiting, you get some 3-and-outs, sort of just limiting the Patriots offense. Because I think if you have to feel like if you're the Falcons, we're going to win this game with our offense, just limit the Patriots offense. You're not going to shut them down. You're not going to, completely baffle Tom Brady. Just limit them and hope for winning a shootout.
The problem with that is that this Patriots team, I think, is uniquely qualified to be able to do that, to kill a team with 1,000 paper cuts.
Oh, yeah, and it is.
And we saw that with essentially the same defense back in that Super Bowl against the Seahawks. This was, and it's a better, a far better version. That Seahawks defense was fantastic. And if you look at what they did to offenses running into that Super Bowl, from week 12 onwards, they allowed 3 points, 3 points, 14 points, 7 points, 6 points, 6 points, 17, 22, and then the Super Bowl, the Patriots put up 28 against them. And this is a team with Tom Brady at quarterback that will just be perfectly happy picking up 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards. As long as it keeps moving the chain, they're not going to get greedy and I think frustrated. I think the success, or the key to that success of that kind of defense, is you just frustrate quarterbacks. You hate picking up yardage in that kind of excruciatingly small increments. And every now and again, they just snap and they go deep. And that's when you pick them off, and that's the drive done. And even if you don't pick them off, if the pass isn't complete, you put them behind the chains, and suddenly it becomes a problem. But Brady will just take what you give him all day long. And if it takes him, 15 plays to get into the end zone, it's going to take him 15 plays. But if they were able to do that against that Seahawks defense a couple of years ago, I just don't see how the Falcons defense, which is basically a worse version of the same scheme, is going to be able to stop them.
Well then, okay, you can just tell me I'm wrong. How are you going to defend them?
Well, that's the problem. I don't have a better solution to it. I'm just saying that one's not going to work.
So thank you for that. Thank you for nothing, I guess. Just saying it's not. Yeah, so nothing's going to work. Then you have no advice.
Well, this is I just don't think you can beat the Patriots by
our consulting service is dead. Sam.
It's struggling. It's on the ropes at the moment. I don't think you can beat the Patriots by essentially forcing them to do what they do pretty well, which is beat you by excruciatingly small increments every single play. I think that's it's almost playing into their hands. The only way that makes sense is if you think that they are going to fail on enough drives that your offense will just be able to put points up faster than they are and almost frustrate them into trying to get themselves out of that game plan, which again, it just doesn't really seem like the kind of trap the Patriots are going to fall into. So I think you need to try and scheme ways to take away what they want to do. I think you need to figure out a way how to get interior pressure on Tom Brady, whether that's blitzing up the gut, whether it's running stunts and twists up the middle, and then I think they need to use Keanu Neal to lay some hits over the middle. Those guys are going to go over the middle. They're going to use those short option routes and pick up yardage. I think you almost need to accept a personal foul penalty, and just say, look, the first guy that comes over the middle, light him the hell up, and we'll
put a bounty on someone.
I'm not going to say that because that gets people into trouble. But you just say, look, the first guy that comes into your area, put him on the floor, and we'll eat the 15-yard penalty if we have to, because those guys have got to not be comfortable going into that area because that's where they're good at. I don't know. I think both defenses are going to really struggle to contain the offenses. I think the Patriots D is better equipped to do it, but the Falcons offense, I think, is better than the Patriots offense. So it's like a net tie. So I think this is what I'm saying. I think this becomes a really fascinating matchup to see which defense can do a better job of just trying to slow down the offense they're going up against.
I agree. I do think it is. So who are you taking then, Sam? It sounds like you're on the fence.
I am on the fence. I'm really struggling with this one. I don't think it's a clear thing in either direction, but every time this season that I've doubted the Falcons, they've stood up to be counted, and they've played better than I've given them credit for. And even when they've lost the game, they went up to Seattle, and everyone was calling that a kind of, a litmus test game for them, and they almost did it. People aren't supposed to win in Seattle. There was some dodgy officiating late in that game, but they had a real shot to win that. And then obviously when the the home venue was reversed in the playoffs, they pretty much stomped them. Again, the next week, it was supposed to be Aaron Rodgers unstoppable. They just destroyed that Green Bay defense before Aaron Rodgers could even get going. So I'm going to lean with the Falcons for once. I'm going to say they've earned enough credit over the course of the season that if it's close, give them the benefit of the doubt.
I'm going to disagree I've obviously been stated that earlier in the game, or earlier in the podcast, how the only matchups that favor one side seem like it's the Patriots against, the Patriots are the ones being favored. I just think they're by far the more complete team, have the fewer weaknesses. Now, I'm not sure it's going to be not close like Tuck thinks it is, but I think the Patriots are a much better team. I mean, at the end of the day, that's
usually a sound reason to go for them. All right. What is the line is still 3, is it?
Yeah, it's -3. And I was somewhat on the fence for that until I saw Kyle Shanahan's backpack got stolen at the media days, and I was just like, I put the paycheck on the Patriots. It's just something happened there. I mean, nothing's ever going to get proven, but a little too much smoke there for me to not think that it was the Patriots behind the scenes there. So
it was a very convenient cover story that it was, was it a San Francisco 49ers reporter picked it up? Sure it was. Yeah, a guy
picked it up with a photocopier, and
you take the San Francisco 49ers overalls off him as a Patriots T-shirt underneath.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for us. That's our take on the big game. You can tune in next week to find out how badly wrong we got it when we review the Super Bowl. But for me and Mike now, that's it. Take it easy. Tuck will be back next week as well, I'm sure, to figure out how wrong he got it as well. Hope you enjoyed.